I think only take on what you can, and it's okay if it doesn't happen.
Shawna, welcome to Shaping Pottery and share with me what is something you believe everyone in the pottery world should be doing?
So everybody in the pottery world, I think everybody should be experimenting and trying new things and learning from each other.
Absolutely agree 100%. So tell me the story how you got started making pottery.
So I think I got started with pottery. I really started in high school. I took a class while I was just in high school, the local art college, and I always knew that I wanted to go to art school. So, but I thought I wanted to be a photographer. So when I went into college, I went for photography and learned that I didn't like it as much as I thought I would. Just didn't have as much tactile stuff for me. But I had taken that pottery class in high school, so I took pottery as an elective or ceramics class as an elective. And I kind of fell in love with it there. So I stopped my photography journey and started pottery instead.
What were you feeling when you dropped pottery and you started focusing more on, or you dropped photography and you started focusing more on pottery?
I think that I just really loved the kind of communal aspect of pottery. In the photo studio, everybody was kind of in their own like little dark space, and just the way that the communities worked. The pottery studio was so welcoming, and I made some really good friends there. And I don't know, I just loved it. I loved getting my hands in the clay and getting kind of messy. And I'm grateful for the photography background because I think it's definitely helped me out, you know, continuing through pottery.
I absolutely love that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about your photography just a little bit later. But for now, you contribute growth as an artist to being a mother. Can you tell me more about this?
Yeah, so I think that we grow as artists and people through our life experiences. And a big one for me, which I know is the same for a lot of people with children, is having a kid and watching them grow up and become their own human who you weren't maybe expecting. And you kind of get to relive childhood through their eyes, and you see things in a different perspective. So I think that it's just a big part of me as a person, so that translates to me as an artist.
Tell me more about that. How does it translate to you as an artist?
So a lot of my work, I mean, I enjoy doing illustrations and drawing on my pots. So, a lot of the things that I make, even the forms that I make and the images that I put on there, come from my life experiences a lot of times with my daughter. So, for instance, I make these little mini mixers, I call them. It's like a little mug with a spout, for mixing eggs and stuff. And it's not unique. Lots of people do that. But I think my daughter went through a phase where she wanted to make scrambled eggs for breakfast every day. And I was always reaching for a mug or something to mix it up in that was just, for a couple of eggs. And, I was like, man, it would be a lot easier if this had a spout on it. And I could make that with one of my forms. And let me just think about the things that we're using while we're making those eggs, and how we're handling them, and how can I incorporate that into the design, both in how the form is and how the illustration is. So then that just kind of evolves into that final piece. So so I take a lot of inspiration just from our daily rituals and the things that we do around the house, or the experiences that we have.
Absolutely love that. Shaping Nation, you can take experiences from your everyday life and you can apply it to your pottery, and it'll actually impact the way you make your pottery that much more. I love that. So, how do you balance being a mother and also being a full time artist?
It's always an interesting balance. I I think the best thing for me has been to bring my daughter down into the studio with me when I can. Since she was little, I've kind of been pulling her down here and given her a little bit of clay to play with. Now that she's older, she helps me take pictures of my work. She helps sand pots. She knows how to run a credit card machine because we take her to the shows, and she's pretty good at it. So, I think that just being able to kind of cross those different roles in life has been really useful.
What advice would you give to other parents out there that also want to be making pottery, maybe doing it full time as well?
I'd say give yourself grace. It's not easy. The kids don't always cooperate, and you don't always have the time. So, I think only take on what you can, and it's okay if it doesn't happen. Try to make time for it. I would always sneak in when she was little, I would sneak in time when she was napping or when after she went to bed, or, make a date to go with a grandparent or something, and then I'd get some studio time in. But I just knew at that time that that wasn't going to be as full time as I wanted it to be.
That was some excellent advice right there. I absolutely love it. So let's talk about your pottery. Can you tell me the story how you started making the pottery that you make today?
Okay, so I I feel like it's evolved a lot throughout the years. It's kind of stayed where it is now for a little while, but I've always been interested in putting images into pottery, or like personality into pots. And originally started with rubber stamps, and I was using rubber stamps and underglaze that I loaded into a blank stamp pad and would just stamp images all over the pots and do some painting and stuff. And I started to feel like the images weren't my own because I could only use the ones that I could purchase. And I still have a pretty good collection of really random kind of vintage images on stamps. But I wanted to be able to put my own drawings on the pots. So I kind of figured out this method of using the silk screens and the jelly plate to silk screen the image that I drew, transfer it in onto the pottery, and then be able to kind of paint into it. So, and then, as far as the forms go, I love both throwing and hand building. So my current way of working is kind of a combination of both. So I cut out slabs and I put them on the wheel and I shape them over a mold with throwing methods. And then I take those and I slab build on top of it. And that's how I kind of form the pots. So I think, it's a lot of it is just all the things that I really want to do that I smushed into one pot.
Why do you do both or combine both wheel throwing and hand building?
So I really like them both. I love the wheel, but I'm not very good at throwing the same thing over and over again. I was never trained as a production potter, and I'm not good at it. It drives me crazy. I get very annoyed when there's just little differences. So I think that by incorporating the hand built aspect, I'm able to kind of make a pattern that I can follow, which helps my work be the same. So all of the mugs are the same size, all of the bowls are the same size, and I can kind of like figure out the form that way. And the hand building with the slabs, it kind of it gives me permission to be a little bit looser and not as uptight about everything being perfectly round and symmetrical and exactly the same.
Absolutely love that. Shaping Nation, you don't have to stick to just one technique. You can literally do all kinds of techniques. You can combine them. You can do whatever. It doesn't matter as long as you are enjoying the process and it's soothing your soul. I absolutely love that. So now, why do you like adding illustrations to your pottery?
So I think I love when people have a connection to the pots, and that I have found to be a huge connection for people. There are just these small things in life that we all kind of have stories around, and I love being at a show and hearing somebody come up and say, "Oh, that's my favorite flower. Or, I remember my gram used to grow these in the garden." And I have people who say like my I just had a client who wanted a little mini strawberry mug because she and her grandmother went strawberry picking every year, and her grandmother only drinks a little bit of coffee, so she was, kind of like specific about what she wanted. But I just love the connection that people have with that. So I don't know, I enjoy drawing. I enjoy kind of looking at all the smaller things that are around and making them a part of our daily rituals, and it kind of heightens it to an importance maybe it didn't have otherwise.
How can somebody start adding a connection to their pottery for somebody else?
So I think that you just have to do it for yourself first. So when people come up with those connections, it's not like I knew that was gonna happen. It's usually that it's something that's important to me, and it's a connection that I have with the object, and then other people have shared connections. So I think that it's not necessarily about trying to figure out what other people are interested in and what they would like or what you think might sell. It's more about finding what makes you happy and what your personal connection is, and going from there. And that's sort of like, it's a little bit more genuine, I think, and people will have those connections just because.
Absolutely love that. Shaping Nation, the most important thing is to make for yourself first, and people will make connections themselves because there are a bunch of different people in this world, and we all have interests that align somewhat another if in groups.
Mhm.
So, can you walk me through the steps you take when you are adding illustrations to your pottery?
Sure. So usually my ideas will come sort of randomly, maybe like if I'm on a walk or just doing something around the house, or like there's, something that we just do all the time. And I'll think that, that's something that I kind of want to explore a little bit more. So I used to use a sketchbook. Now I'm using an iPad. A year or so ago, I got myself an iPad, and I've been doing the drawings digitally, which just sort of saves me the step of scanning in drawings, and I love it. But so I keep a digital sketchbook, and I will draw usually at night while we're watching TV. I'll just sit with my iPad and I sketch, and then sometimes those sketches make it onto a pot, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just live on the iPad for a while. So once I have the drawing done, I usually lay it out. I try to make all of my pieces so that my images fit within like a half page of printer paper. So I don't know what that would be, like 11 and a half by 4 or something. So that and like that kind of relates to all of the pots that I make too. So everything is pre-measured. So I lay out the images on that strip of computer, really, and then I print it out. I burn a silk screen, so I use these uh, like fabric screens. They kind of are like paper screens that are coated with photo emulsion. So I burn a screen, and then I use underglaze that I've thickened to be an ink consistency. I silk screen on top of the gelatin plate, and then I roll the pottery over the print so that it transfers over. And then I use watered down underglazes as similar to watercolor to paint the images.
Why or where can people get the silk screening you're talking about?
So the ones that I'm using currently are from Small Dog Prints, and she's just like a local small business. Then she sells really nice ones. They're the orange ones that I've been using, and then there's a couple other companies that make them. I think Easy Screen Print makes them. I believe that Speedball makes them. I think Mako makes some, but I'm not sure if they're the kind that you can burn or not, or if they already have images on them. But it's not too hard to find.
Love it. So let's talk about the business side of pottery. Can you tell me about the moment when you decided to become a full-time potter?
Well, I decided to become a full-time potter kind of a while ago. I used to be an art teacher. I've been doing this for a long time, so I kind of knew coming out of college that I wanted to be a potter full time, but I didn't have there's no health insurance. It's not a lot of money to make pots right out the bat, and I didn't have a studio. So I went into teaching and I taught elementary school art for a little while. And then I taught college. Hang on, let me get my brain to wake up. I taught art education for Towson University for probably about 12 years. And during that whole time, I really wanted to be doing pottery. So I kind of did it on the side and worked up to having my own studio and being able to do it more and more and more and backing off on work more and more. And then, at a certain point, my daughter's school schedule changed and I wasn't able to teach at the university anymore because the timing just didn't work out. And I took that as my opportunity to not try to get another part-time job and just to focus on ceramics, which I've been doing for like maybe a couple years now, a few years. So
What were
actually,
you feel? What were you feeling when you became a full time potter?
nervous but excited. I mean, it's a little bit scary to leave behind the stability, although at that time I wasn't making a ton of money as an adjunct teacher. But, I was excited. I felt like it was something I could do. I felt pretty confident that, at this point, I'd had enough experience doing shows and selling online that it seemed like, okay, if I had the time to devote to this, I think I can do it. So here we are.
Absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. So now, what is something you wish you knew before you became a full time potter?
Hmm. That's a hard one. I I think I would have gone back and told myself to buy a slab roller. I think just having good tools makes being a full-time potter so much easier. I don't I it's hard to say because I think that, like, it's being a full-time potter is I'm not even positive that it's working still. I don't know if it's something that's gonna keep going for forever or at some point I'll have to get another job or whatever, but I don't know if I don't think I would wanna know anything more than that because I might not do it.
Absolutely love that. Shaping Nation, while you don't need a lot of tools to become a full time potter, the better tools you have, the easier it becomes to make pottery and pursue being a full time potter. Absolutely loves that. Now, right now, what works for you to be able to sell your own pottery?
So, right now, I think it's a combination of being online and also being in-person shows. So, I mean, like, with the pandemic, everything kinda all the on in-person shows sort of petered out a little bit, like, they all had to take a break, and it took a little while for them to get back into the swing of things, but the benefit, I guess, was that the online sales sort of went up. So, now it's just sort of a balance of online selling and in-person shows, which is a balancing act because it can only make so many pots. So it's like looking ahead and trying to figure out what I have coming up. I still teach, so I do still teach at the Baltimore Clay Works. I teach a Sunday intermediate wheel class, and occasionally I teach workshops, like both virtual and in person. So it's looking ahead at a schedule and figuring out what's coming up, what do I have to make in the studio, what do I have to do to prepare for a workshop, and what am I applying for. So it's a lot of like pre-planning.
Absolutely love that. So now, what advice would you give to someone that's looking to have some success being a full time potter or even just selling their own pottery as well?
So I think as far as selling your own pottery, I think you should just do it. Just go for it. I think especially when, when I have students at Clayworks who are interested in starting out, there's like this whole nervousness of I feel like I have to have enough to put it out there, and I don't know that you do with as far as like online stuff goes. I think that if you just kind of just jump in and give it a try and see how it goes, and I think you gain confidence that way. Same thing with shows, just make enough that you can have something on your table and just try a little show somewhere. It's nothing real expensive. You don't have to jump into the deep end. It's just give it a try because sometimes people try that and they're like, this is not for me. I don't want to do this. And it's like, you should know that before you spend so much energy and time into, devoting yourself to being full time. So I'd say just jump in.
I absolutely love that advice. Shaping Nation, it's going to be a little bit difficult for you at first to jump in, but the moment you jump in, everything becomes that much easier and you gain more confidence the more you do it. I absolutely love that. So let's talk about discovering your voice. Can you tell me about the moment when you knew you were heading in the right direction with your pottery?
I don't know that there was necessarily a moment. I think that when I started getting pots back out of the kiln that were, I was like, I'm happy with these. This is what I wanted it to look like. And I think some of the surprise came out of it. Like, I wasn't surprised when I opened the kiln anymore. I was starting to look at things and saying, nope, that's in my head what I wanted it to look like. I feel like maybe that was a good sign that I was going in the right direction. Getting feedback from people that it was unique or different, or they've not seen something like that before, has been pretty cool. So I think, feeling like my work doesn't look like other people's work is kind of fun.
What would you say was your biggest obstacle when it came to finding your own voice?
I think trying to not replicate the artist that I really loved their work. I think that it's okay when you're first starting to see people who are making pots and say, like, I want to make that pot, and kind of trying to figure out what they're doing and how they're doing it. But then I think, taking that and making it into your own is also really important. That's kind of how you're going to find your voice. So I think that, one of the biggest obstacles is just learning how to say, okay, I love that person's work and I love these elements about it, and like, maybe those are some elements that I want to incorporate, but I need to be able to make it my own, and kind of going from there.
How do you think someone can make pottery their own even if they're modeling other potters?
So I think that, like, the modeling part is the learning part. So you have to, if you're trying to figure out a new technique, or you're trying to figure out, how to do a handle, or a certain process, then I always give my students permission to do what I do. So the first time out, like, try to copy me and see if you can do it, but then kind of to take that apart and figure out, well, what did I do to get there, and what parts work for me and what parts don't work for me, and how can I tweak this a little bit, or change it a little bit, or do it in my own style or my own voice. And sometimes it takes a while, and sometimes it takes doing it over and over and over again until it eventually evolves into something new.
Absolutely love that. Shaping Nation, it's okay to copy other or model other potters, but don't stay there. Make tiny little changes here and there until you have found something that truly resonates with you. Absolutely love that. Now, what advice would you give to someone looking to discover their own unique voice with their pottery?
I think if you're trying to discover your own voice, I think that by keeping a notebook of things that you love, going outside of ceramics, and maybe looking at forms, whether they're like industrial forms or organic forms or whatever, looking at colors. Just I tend to keep a huge Pinterest collection of all of those things. I have them separated into categories. So it's like things, different forms, different color schemes, different handles, like all of the things just start to, kind of form a collection. And and think about, and like, try them out, try out different techniques and different things. And when you find something that really resonates with you, then keep going with it and see where it takes you. I think that it's hard. It's not an easy thing to find your own voice and figure it out, but I think the more you try to do different things, and the more information you're giving yourself and opportunities you're giving yourself, the easier it will come.
I absolutely agree. So that was some excellent advice, but there. I absolutely love that. Shawna, it's been great chatting today. And as we're coming to a close here, what is one thing you want to hammer home with my listeners today?
I think just get out there and experiment, take classes and learn new things and always be pushing the boundaries. See,
Some
that's how you make new work.
some excellent parting words of advice. Shawna, it's been great chatting today. Where can my listeners go and learn more about you?
So you can go to my website, which is www.pinkusspottery.com. You can find me on Instagram or all the things. I am at Pinkus Pottery.